sir, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You can go ahead and be seated. And when you're seated, if you would just please speak into the microphone, state your full name, and spell your last name.
My name is Stephen Schusler. It's spelled Schusler.
Thank you, sir. You may inquire.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, Mr. Schusler.
Hello.
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Would you just tell the jury a little bit about yourself, where you live, and what your profession is, please?
I currently live in Hobe Sound, and I am a mechanical inspector.
And before moving to Hobe Sound, where did you live?
I lived in Parkland, directly across the street from Nikolas Cruz.
All right. And when you were living in Parkland, who'd you work for at that point?
I worked in a machine shop called Baker Hill Industries.
And you said that you lived across the street from the Cruz family, is that right?
Yes.
And who were the members of that family at that time when you lived there?
I met the mother.
So would you mind just the microphone is stationary, but if you could just speak up a tad so we can hear you a little bit better?
Okay.
Thank you.
I knew the mother and her two sons.
Okay. And so is that Linda Cruz is the mother?
Linda Cruz was the only one who lived there at the time. Linda Cruz and her two sons.
Yes, sir.
Nikki and Zach.
Okay, so you knew Nikolas as Nicky, is that right?
Yes.
All right. And just so to make sure that I'm right about this, is that Northwest 80th Terrace? Is that the street?
Yes.
On that?
Yes.
And tell us just who you were living with at that time, who you were renting from.
I was renting a guest house that was behind the house, the main house. I lived alone in the guest house.
All right. And when you were, whose house, whose property were you renting from?
The owner's name was Mila Risen. Okay. She owned the main residence.
And at that time in your life when you lived in Parkland and you were working at Baker Hill, what did you drive to and from work?
Mainly I took my motorcycle, but I also had a car for bad weather.
During that period of time, were you having some trouble with your motorcycle?
Absolutely, yes. It's a 1983 Honda. I still have it, and it's just constant need of repairs.
And do you do most of those repairs yourself?
Yes. No one will work on these old bikes anymore. You can't get parts. You have to do it yourself.
So I'm going to be asking you about some of your memories of the time that you lived across the street from the Cruz family. And what year did you move into Miss Risen's place?
2009.
Okay. And then do you remember when you moved out?
2015.
2015. Okay. When you think about your time living in Parkland, Miss Risen's place, how do you sort of break it up in your mind in terms of time frame?
Excuse me.
Well, in conjunction with this trial, I break up my time in 3 periods because I don't know exact dates. I don't know exact times. So I break things up in the beginning of my stay in Parkland. I lived in there 6 years. So I broke it up into 3 segments to kind of describe. So my first period was when I met Nikki. Then my second period was a period of observation, friendliness. Towards my third period, this was at a time when it was cautious with Nikki. I was apprehensive of him. And so those are the 3 periods that I break up my stay to give you an idea of what I was observing through those 6 years. So 3 periods, the beginning, the middle, and the end.
And obviously we'll start with the beginning. You moved in 2009. And how was it that you came to be introduced to the Cruz family?
Okay. just moved in. I'm renting the guest house from Mila. We shared the driveway. She has a circular driveway in front of her house. And I kind of dominated one end of that with my motorcycle and my car. I am in the driveway, just moved in, and Mila was getting her mail. We shared a common mailbox, and she was getting her mail, and I had just gotten home, and I'm parking my motorcycle, and the boys, 2 boys, were across the street playing. I don't know who they are. Mila was talking to me, and she called them over. She called them over across the street to introduce me to them. And she says, this is Steve, he's going to be renting here. And she says, this is Nikki, and this is Zach. She said, points to Nikki and said, he's the weird one. And I stopped, and I didn't really kind of comprehend what she was saying right in front of this little boy. And I asked her, I said, what did you just say? And she said it again. She said, it's Nikki. He's the weird one. Aren't you, Nikki? And I could not believe that she was demeaning that boy right to his face, calling him a weird one. I could look at him, and I could see that
Okay, ask him.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, sir. When one of the attorneys objects, it's just between me and the lawyers.
Okay.
And if you have any question about what to do,
No.
you can ask me. But at this point, the lawyer's going to ask you another question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just so we're sure, this is spring of '09.
Yes.
Right? And Nikolas was born in September of 1998, so he would have been 10 at this point. Does that sound about right?
Sure, whatever the math works out to be.
And what were your observations of Nicky, as you called him, when you were introduced to him by Miss Rice?
Okay, now I'm going to answer the question, and I will answer the question, but please bear with me, because the irony of our first meeting when she called him weird was distasteful. It was disgusting, and I do not. Here I am going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing that she did, and she called him weird. And yes, he did not have the boyhood image. You could look at him, and you can see something's not right. Something's off. His caricature was, the first thing I saw was him was Alfred E. Neuman. It was not please, and I'm sorry to say this in front of the boy, but he was not attractive. You could see that something's just not right. He looked like Alfred E. Neuman. He had big ears. He had a quirky face. But when she called him weird, what he did was all I could describe it as, it looked like a snail that you put salt on. They just shrivel up, and he just shriveled up, and he stood there while she said he was weird, standing right in front of him, and he just curled up and stood there. Then his mom came out, and his mom came across the street, and she introduced me to the mother, Linda. This is my renter. And she says hi, and took the boys back across the street. She took them back across the street. Me and Mila were still standing there. And then Mila, I saw that there was kind of a conflict between Mila and Linda. And she went on to say that she had a conflict with Linda because her cat was bitten by her dog and she refused to pay. And it seemed to be a personal little squabble. So I didn't meet
Hold on,
Linda.
sir. Just a second, please. May I speak to the lawyer's sidebar, please? Give me just a second, please.